Imagine the weight of steel on your back and the stench of fear in the air, preparing to fight a war the numbers say you have already lost. November 1177. The sun burns with a strange, cruel heat for so late in the year. You stand with 500 brothers. On the horizon, a dark stain spreads, not an army, but an ocean. 26,000 warriors, the sharpest blades of the Islamic world. The math is not just against you, it is a death sentence. 52 enemies for every one of your own. Yet, in just hours, that ocean will recede, leaving a shore of the dead. A teenage king, his body crumbling from disease, will orchestrate a victory that defies all logic of war, faith, and flesh. Today, we uncover the 3 fatal turns that led to this impossible outcome. First, the critical strategic blindness of a legendary commander. Second, the shocking moment elite warriors, bred for victory, chose flight over fight. And third, the act of sheer will by a dying boy king that rewrote the destiny of continents. But to understand the miracle, you must first grasp the depth of the despair. The kingdom of Jerusalem was holding its breath, waiting for the end. Baldwin IV, the king, was a ghost in a silver mask. Leprosy had consumed him since childhood. By 16, his hands were shrouded in bandages to keep them whole. His face, hidden to spare his court from its ruin. Every dawn he saw was a defiance of medicine. Every breath was a battle he was destined to lose. Facing him was Saladin, the unifier of the Muslim world. A ruler of immense piety and unmatched military skill, his empire stretched from river to sea. His very name could make fortress gates swing open without a fight. He commanded over 100,000 men across his lands. The force he now led toward Jerusalem, 26,000 strong, was nearly double what the entire Crusader kingdom could ever hope to muster. In the city, ships were being loaded with noble treasures for escape. Secret talks for surrender had already begun. The smartest minds had calculated the end. They gave Jerusalem weeks. Days, perhaps. The war council that day was a portrait of resignation. Baldwin, too weak to stand, was carried into the chamber on a litter. The news was final. Saladin's host was bypassing strongholds, marching straight for the undefended heart of the kingdom. The greatest military minds in the room counseled flight, or negotiated surrender. Even the most reckless barons fell silent. The cause was finished. Then the dying king stirred. His voice, thin but clear, cut through the gloom. "I will die as I have lived," he declared, "defending this land. God gave me this affliction for a reason. When we win, let no man claim it was by human strength alone." The room was stunned. When? Had the sickness finally taken his mind? But the Grand Master of the Knights Templar understood first. If a leper boy king could face annihilation with such faith, how could his sworn warriors do less? One by one, the knights knelt, not in defeat, but in a terrifying, newfound belief. Against the arithmetic of annihilation, they placed the calculus of faith. What happened next broke every rule of warfare. Instead of fortifying Jerusalem's walls, Baldwin ordered an immediate march. Not away from the enemy, but directly toward its overwhelming heart. The plan was suicidal. Force march exhausted men 45 miles in 36 hours to attack a force 50 times their size. The heat was a hammer. Men in full armor hallucinated from thirst. Horses stumbled. Baldwin, strapped to a litter, drifted in and out of consciousness, his bandages staining fresh with blood. Each time he woke, his command was the same: continue. Meanwhile, Saladin's confidence became his fatal flaw. Certain of his enemy's cower, he let his vast army scatter across miles of countryside to forage. Discipline relaxed. His commanders argued over the spoils of a victory they had not yet won. He was not preparing for a battle, but for a parade. Dawn on November 25th. Baldwin's shattered force emerged where it was least expected. Saladin's scouts, believing they faced raiders, delivered reports of calm. The Muslim camp was still asleep, figuratively and literally. Then, banners appeared on the ridge. Not scout pennants, but the great war standards of Jerusalem and the stark black and white of the Templars. Panic began its slow, infectious spread. Saladin struggled to form battle lines from his scattered legions. 3 miles of disorder is an eternity when your enemy is already formed, a clenched iron fist. Military doctrine screamed for Baldwin to wait, to use the terrain defensively. He chose the opposite. In agony, the king demanded to be tied to his warhorse. As straps bit into his decaying flesh, he addressed his 500. "David faced Goliath with a stone," he called out. "We face thousands with God." Then he raised a bandaged hand. The signal. At that moment, 500 lances dipped as one. The Templar wedge, 80 men become a single spear point, hit the disorganized Muslim center. The sound was of worlds colliding. They did not wheel away. They drove deeper, a dagger seeking a heart. Behind them, the rest of the knights followed into the breach. Arrows fell like black rain. Men and horses died, but the charge did not waver. Then, the impossible, the Muslim center, 8,000 strong, began to buckle. The physics of war were being rewritten before their eyes. At the peak of the chaos, Baldwin played his masterstroke. 3,000 infantry, hidden until now, rose as one on the Muslim flank. To Saladin's rattled troops, it seemed a second army had materialized from the earth. Cries of, "We are surrounded!" tore through their ranks. Morale, that invisible scaffold of every army, shattered. They did not defeat an army that day, they defeated an idea, the idea of their own invincibility. What followed was not a battle but a hunt. The real horror lay in the land itself. Ravines Baldwin had noted, invisible from a distance, became traps. Fleeing cavalry funneled into these natural channels, where they were cut down in heaps. The killing was methodical, relentless. The final blow to Muslim resolve came when Saladin's own personal guard, his most elite Mamluks, broke and ran. The sight was catastrophic. Seeing their sultan's last defense flee, the rest of the army dissolved into a desperate, scrambling mob. Saladin, in a moment of utter humiliation, abandoned his warhorse for the speed of a racing camel and fled the field. The symbol was devastating, the conqueror, escaping on a beast of burden. By late afternoon, a field meant for a Muslim triumph was a slaughterhouse. Estimates say 20,000 of Saladin's warriors lay dead. The Crusaders lost perhaps 1,100. They captured his entire war chest, his supplies, his pride. On that crimson field, the bankrupt kingdom of Jerusalem suddenly found itself rich. Baldwin, collapsing from his saddle, insisted on leading a prayer amidst the carnage. The image was surreal, blood-soaked conquerors kneeling among mountains of the dead. Saladin's defeat was so total it took him a decade to recover his power and prestige. The Crusader states bought a precious decade of life. But the truest testament came from the enemy. Years later, after Baldwin IV had finally succumbed to his disease at 24, and Saladin at last took Jerusalem, the great Sultan reportedly confessed, "I feared that man more than any army." The Battle of Montgisard teaches us that warfare is not fought on maps, but in the minds of men. 500 did not defeat 26,000 through steel alone. They won because one dying boy convinced them that the impossible was simply what God required. If this story of defiant courage reshaped your view of history, show the channel some love. Give this video a like and subscribe to Winds of Thought for more tales where the human spirit defies the odds.